One of the questions we get asked most often is, what should I look for when buying a chicken coop? Well, there's a few things to consider, and today, in a structured way, we're going to try and answer those questions.
Welcome to English Country Life. My name's Fiona. There are lots of questions when you're choosing the coops for your chickens. Today we're going to take you through step by step all of the things that you might want to consider when choosing your coops. The first thing is, what type of chickens are you going to get? Are you going to be getting dinky little bantams, tiny little things, or large fowl chickens such as we have with the Buff Orpingtons? Are you going to be breeding? Do you want them as egg layers? Because both of those considerations need slightly different configurations of coop. Well, today we'll go through step by step, so let's get started.
Probably the first thing you're going to have to think about with your coops is, how big a coop do I need? Well, I made this coop a long time ago and I'm going to have to remake it this winter. It needs some attention, but let's think of it as a template. This coop is 1.5 meters long by 1 meter wide, so 1.5 square meters of floor space, and for our large fowl Buff Orpington that will comfortably hold 10 birds. Now, it's important to recognise that we have a lot of shelters, covered sandbaths, so they have other places to hang out during the day. So really this coop gets used only for laying and for roosting at night, but for those purposes it's quite big enough for 10 birds. Now, Buff Orpingtons will tend to roost on the ground, on the floor of the coop in this case, so they don't need perch space, but most breeds do. So let's take a look at another coop which has got perches in and talk about how much perch length you need for each of your birds. We call this the trailer coop. It's the coop that we put the birds in that are not Orpingtons, that keep us in eggs when all the Orpingtons are raising chicks or sat on eggs ready to hatch them. It has 2 perches that run front to back along the main body of the coop, and basically these birds are the ones that will want to perch. Let's take a look inside and I'll explain how many birds that will accommodate. These are the type of perch that I like to make. They're made out of batten, about 1 inch by 1 inch, with the corners rounded off. And in this coop, they're about 95 centimetres long, and that gives room for 4 large fowl birds. And I've got 2, 1 each side of the coop. And they're about 30 centimetres apart, maybe a foot apart. You can't put them much closer together than that, because that needs to allow room for the birds to stick out either side of the perch. So with roughly 2 meters of perch space appropriately spread out, you can fit 8 large fowl birds into this coop.
If you're looking for coops, you'll have noticed that there's high coops on stilts and low coops. So which one do you choose? Well, the pros and cons of a low coop to begin with. Well, the big pro is they're the most readily available on the market. So you can go for very, very large, you can go for very, very small, and you'll have a lot of choice out there. For us as chicken breeders, the other big advantage of a low coop is small chicks can easily navigate the ramps in and out. With high coops, it's a lot more difficult for them. Now the downsides, well, the first thing is I'm kneeling on the grass on a rainy day. I'm going to get wet knees, and I'm getting older as well, and getting down and up again is a bit more of a problem, and it'll get worse as I get older. The other problem is rats and mice. In winter they want to keep warm, and under a low coop they can bury underneath the floor and keep themselves warm and live in little burrows in the ground. Now it's easily solved. Just pop your low coop onto some slabs and that stops that problem. And we're back to the trailer coop. And this absolutely has the opposite pros and cons to the low coop. But straight away, big pro, I can lean in, collect the eggs, clean out, check on the chickens, so you can see it's so much easier for me. And this actually is my favourite coop for exactly that reason. But you'll notice that ramp is going to be a problem for small chicks, so if you are breeding chickens, just bear that in mind. We don't have the rodent problem though, because look at this, it's so high off the ground. Any rodent is not going to get any warmth from being underneath. However, you'll notice that it is on slabs, and that's because chickens did create a dust bath underneath when it was on earth, and over time the dust bath got bigger and bigger and bigger. The coop started to lean sideways and almost fall into the hole, so we've now put it on slabs so that it's stable and the chickens don't have that issue.
The next thing that we need to think about is how you're going to get in and out of the coop for cleaning out, for picking up chickens for inspection, for collecting eggs. There's really two major ways of doing it. Either you go in through the top or in through the side. But there's good and bad examples of both. And we're looking at this coop first because it's a bad example of both. You can get in the top. Look, it hinges open. But because those flaps hinge at the bottom, you're left with a big spike in the middle, and when you bend over that spike to get to the floor, you end up jabbing yourself in the chest and stomach all the time with a piece of wood, and it's really actually quite uncomfortable after a period of time. It's also got a side hatch, but that side hatch is so small that I can only get one arm into it. I can't lean into the coop, and I end up waving my arm around like an elephant's trunk trying to clear out the floor of the coop. Whereas if they just made it double width, I could lean in comfortably, do the job in a third of the time. So both methods are great, but they need to be thought through thoroughly. So let's show you a better way of doing a top opening and a better way of doing a side flap. This is a good example of a side access for a coop. It opens wide, it opens all the way down to the ground. It's 50 centimetres wide, 20 inches wide, so I can fit my shoulders through there, leaning comfortably and work well. But it's not so big that if I want to pick up a chicken, all the others jump out around me. I know I built it, but this is the right design for a top opening on a coop. It's hinged at the top, and you do have to be careful to put a good waterproof gusset on there to keep the rain out. But it opens the full width of the coop. Because of the side walls, your other chickens are not going to jump out if you reach in to do an inspection, but it's so easy and comfortable with great access for a clean out.
One thing you might not have thought about is the pop hole to go with your coop, and there are two big choices: manual or automatic, up and down or side to side. Well, manual is the most common, but there is a downside. If you've got a run attached to your coop, you have to go and get that door shut at night or open in the morning. And in a run, you'll have to crawl in unless there's a way of opening that door from the outside. Now, this is a great possibility. This coop does come with a run, but this handle sticks out outside the run, so we can open the door or close it from the outside without any problems. There are automatic openers out there, which means actually the door opens for you and closes at night without you having to be involved, which means if you're working late or actually someone's looking after the chickens for you, the door will still open and close without you being involved. Up and down is really common. There's lots out there on the market, but side to side there's only one that we know of in the market, and it's a very good one. It's made by Omelette, and we're going to be fitting that to a brand new coop that we are making this winter. You might have noticed this up and down riser on some of our other coops, and it's a good demonstration of the difference between side to side and up and down auto openers. Think about it. This up and down, we've had to create much greater height on this coop for the door to rise into. Now, depending on the type of chicken you've got, that can be a good or a bad thing. On a side to side opener, your door moves in a wider section, so that means you've got a lot more floor space. Now, if you need height because you've got flighty birds who want to perch at different heights, up and down may be better for you. If you've got large fowl like we have, we probably should have put side to side on our coops because we would have had more floor space for birds which don't like to perch.
Let me quickly cover nest boxes for you. It's important to know all your chickens are likely to want to lay in the same place. So going for 2 nest boxes doesn't give you any advantage, and it can give you a lot of disadvantages. On this coop, we've got nice big hatches on that side, and we've got a nest box on this side. If we had nest boxes on both sides, we couldn't have that nice big hatch, and that's a problem. The other point is they're a point of water ingress and they're a point of weakness. Here, where the nest box hinges, It's where water will get into your coop. And if you've got 2 nest boxes, you've got 2 areas where you've got water getting in. We fit a rubber gusset under the main eave in an attempt to keep water out, but even then it will tend to find its way in. The other point is these kind of units are generally made separately from the body of the coop, and what that means is they're screwed to the side. It becomes a point of weakness, and over time they can break away from the main coop, causing you problems. Let me show you a better arrangement. After all our years of chicken keeping, this is the design I think is the best. We've got the nest box at the back, we've got the pop hole at the front, and the sides are available for whatever other forms of access that we want, whether it be a lifting lid or a nice big comfortable hatch in the side. In terms of strength, I've got solid wooden bars running the whole length of the coop. This nest box hasn't been added on, it's integral to the design, and therefore it's as strong as the rest of the coop. There's one other thing you can do to make that nest box really comfortable for your chickens. Let's take a look inside and I'll show you that. This is the coop that our chickens most prefer laying in, and the reason is that I've boxed off 1/3 of the entryway of the nest box on either side, creating a small entrance and a very quiet, dark space, and they seem to like that as a laying area.
This coop was advertised as having a big advantage, and that is that it's got a removable floor. And yes, cleaning it becomes very, very simple, because all I have to do is pull the handles, take that floor out, I can scrub it down, I can hose it down, I can put it on the vertical and practically drip dry it. It's so easy to clean. However, it's got 2 disadvantages. Because the floor is in a wooden frame, over time that wood has warped very slightly. So taking it out now and putting it back in is a lot more difficult. And it's created little gaps between the floor itself and the coop. So we've added to the drafts inside for the chickens. Bit of a problem. The other disadvantage is all of the removable floors have been lined with some kind of metal which has corroded as time has passed. So we've had to take all of that metal out and replace it with brand new wooden floors just to safeguard the coops for the longer term.
One thing people don't give enough attention to when designing or buying a coop is how to move it around. Even if you just put it together on your driveway and move it into your garden, it's got to be moved, and my goodness, wooden coops are heavy. Now, this is something where a raised coop does come into its own a little bit. I built this one, you can just see the black bit there, that's the frame of an old trailer, and it's got central wheels. Now at this end, underneath and integral to the nest box, I've got big long handles, and those are the same rails I talked about earlier that run the full length of the coop. And at the other end, once you move that ramp out of the way, there's nothing sticking out. That matters, because if you lift up the handles, the front tends to dig into the ground if there's anything sticking out. And therefore wheels don't work well on a low coop. On a low coop, you want big strong handles at both ends and 2 of you to move them.
We're clearly not out in the chicken field, we're actually in our barnyard, and this is where we are storing our runs, and that's because we free range our chickens. We don't actually use the runs for many purposes. The only time we do use them to a large extent is when we've got broody hens, because the broody hen needs some relaxation, needs some calm and quiet without other hens coming in and annoying them, and a run allows them to have a little bit of outside space still and access to grass for when they do come off the nest and want to eat outside and do a little bit of grazing. The other reason why we have runs is we always make sure we've got at least 1 spare coop available, and that's because sometimes you do have chickens who are not feeling their best, and what we do is we take them out, put them in a separate coop and a separate run away from the chicken field, and that means that they've got a chance to recover, and it also means if they happen to have something which could be communicable, it's not passed to the other chickens, so it's a good safeguard. And if you are going to start keeping chickens, we do recommend that you have somewhere as an emergency area to keep any sick hens, just so you don't have other hens who become sick at the same time. Now, we do free range our birds, so these runs are not attached to the coops permanently. But if you're in an arrangement where that is your only option, we'll put a link to a website down below where you can have a look at the amount of recommended outside space you do need to provide, so you can measure up and see how big that run that you need is going to need to be. Clearly this isn't a chicken run, but it is our fruit cage, and if you're in a country which suffers from aerial predators, something like this may be a good idea, because if you can't free range them and you need to protect them, a structure like this may be a cheap option to give your chickens lots and lots of space. Now, over this last winter here in the UK, we had avian influenza restrictions, and legally we had to keep our chickens in fully enclosed areas under net, and we had one of our fruit cages used in exactly the same way to keep our chickens protected.
One thing I think is important to talk about is materials. All the coops we've spoken about today are wooden. Now, we've moved over and we make our own coops now, and I can work wood. So honestly, wood is easy for us. It's a material that we're familiar and comfortable with. But there are other options. One of our great friends makes his coops out of aluminium, of all things, because he uses things like old Land Rover backs and old horse trailers. And of course, aluminium doesn't rust, it doesn't rot, and when he needs to clean them out, he can do it with a jet wash. It does have disadvantages. It can get quite hot on a sunny day, but it is another material. The third material that I think is really worth considering for you is plastic. There are a lot of commercially made plastic coops out there from all sorts of sizes, from the small to, in fact, to extremely large ones made of recycled plastic. A bit harder to make yourself, although I have come across one or two people who've done so. And some people will tell you, oh, plastic's wonderful because it doesn't get spider mite. Yes, it does, although it may be easier to clean out. It doesn't degrade. Actually, plastic can become brittle in the sun, so nothing is permanent, nothing is forever. But I would say it is fair to say that plastic is relatively maintenance-free and does have good longevity. So it is a material worth considering.
That's everything to look for when selecting a chicken coop. If you have enjoyed this content, take a moment and give us a thumbs up down below. If you're not already a subscriber, come and join us. Hit subscribe and the bell icon and you'll get notified of every new video as soon as it goes live. If you've got a question for us, just leave it in the comment section and we'll do our best to get back to you as soon as possible. But for now, thanks for watching and we look forward to seeing you next time.